Okay, so we are continuing Chapter 2, The Imprints of Experience, in Joseph Campbell's book on primitive mythology. And yes, this is a long chapter. I think this is actually the longest chapter in the whole book. So we were reading about the initiation rites in Australia. On the psychological side, then, we may say that the boy is being carried across the difficult threshold from the sphere of dependency on the mothers to that of participation in the nature of the fathers, not only by means of a decisive physical transformation of his own body, first in the rite of circumcision, just reviewed, and then more cruelly, as we shall presently see, in the rite of subincision, but also by means of a series of intense psychological experiences, reawakening, but at the same time reorganizing all the primitive imprints and fantasies of the infantile unconscious. Or to use the Freudian jargon, the elders arouse, absorb, and redirect their sons' Oedipal impulses to aggression, destrudo, thanatos, and simultaneously their will to live and love, libido, eros. As we have just seen, the boy's future father-in-law is the functionary who offers him on a shield to the operation. What is cut off the boy, writes Dr. Roheim? It is really the mother. As compensation, he naturally receives a wife. The glands in the foreskin is the child in the mother. But there is another aspect to this great world of the men's rights for which no merely psychological reading of their symbolism can adequately account, namely, the particular mythological fields to which the boy's intellect is being introduced. His crude energies of love and aggression are being broken from their primary spheres of reference and reorganized for manhood. But the particular system of imagery through which his psychological transformation is being effected has been determined not exclusively by general psychological laws, but also, and perhaps equally, by the particular social concerns of the local group. And we may well marvel at the simple, adroit, wonderfully direct manner in which the participation of his interest is elicited. We have already seen how the sacred objects of his tribe were first presented to his awakened imagination. Throughout his childhood, the boy had heard the awesome sound of the bull roars at the time of the mysteries of the men's camp, and had been told that the curiously whirring hum was the voice of a spirit that at the time of his own initiation would enter his body and support him to manhood. An anxious sense of interest and curiosity had thus been aroused, which at the time of the revelation was considerably shocked when it appeared that the actual spirit was a bit of flat wood, about 1.5 feet long, bearing a scratched design on its surface, and whirled at the end of a long string. The childhood boogie was abruptly collapsed into this tangible stick, which, however, was declared to have been derived from the mythological realm and to be of the profoundest import both to the boy himself as representing his own eternal aspect and to his people as constituting one of a constellation of sacred objects known as Churinga, revered in the tribal rites. Pressed to the boy's bleeding circumcision wound, his Churinga turned his mind from a sense of loss to one of gain, and directly joined him, both emotionally and in thought, to the realm of myth. But the reader, meanwhile, must certainly have recalled, perhaps with a touch of wonder, the celebrated classical myth of the death and second birth, through his father Zeus, of the babe Dionysus. When the great mother goddess Demeter, we are told, arrived in Sicily from Crete with her daughter Persephone, whom she had conceived of Zeus, she discovered a cave near the spring of Chiain, where she hid the maiden, setting to guard her the two serpents that were normally harnessed to the maiden's chariot. And Persephone there began weaving a web of wool, a great robe on which there was to be a beautiful picture of the universe, while her mother Demeter contrived that the girl's father Zeus should learn of her presence. The god approached his daughter in the form of a serpent, and she conceived of him a son, Dionysus, who was born and nurtured in the cave. The infant's toys were a ball, a top, dice, some golden apples, a bit of wool, and a bull roarer. But he was also given a mirror, and while he was gazing into this, delighted, there approached him stealthily from behind two Titans, who had been sent to slay him by the goddess Hera, the jealous wife and queen of his father Zeus. And they were painted with a white clay or chalk. Pouncing upon the playing child, they tore him into 7 parts, boiled the portions in a cauldron supported by a tripod, and then roasted them on 7 spits. However, when they had consumed their divine sacrifice, all except the heart, which had been rescued by the goddess Athene, Zeus, attracted by the odor of the roasting meat, entered the cave, and when he beheld the scene, slew the white-painted cannibal Titans with a bolt of lightning. The goddess Athene thereupon presented the rescued heart in a covered basket to the father, who accomplished the resurrection, according to one version of the miracle, by swallowing the precious relic, and himself then giving birth to his son. It is surely no mere accident nor coincidence of parallel development that has brought the bull roarers on the scene for both the Greek and the Australian occasions, as well as the figures masquerading in white. The Australians wearing bird down, the Greek Titans smeared like clowns with white clay. For the Titans were divine beings of an earlier generation than the gods. They were the children of the sky and earth, and from 2 of their number, Cronos and Rhea, the gods themselves, the Olympians, were born. They and their mythology derive from an earlier stratum of thought and religion than the classical pantheon of the Olympians, and the episodes in which they appear have frequently traits of an extremely primitive tone. A number of recent scholars have pointed to the parallels between these traits and those of the rites of living primitive tribes. From the Greeks, however, we do not excuse me. From the Greeks, however, we do not learn through what motherly organ Father Zeus could have given birth to his son. In the primitive ritual, this now appears. For the next dramatic series of instructions and ordeals to which the young Australian is subjected are those of his subincision, which follow the rites of circumcision after an interval of some 5 or 6 weeks, depending on the time required by the boy for recovery from the first operation. These extremely painful rites commence with a brief series of instructive mimes, which terminate with the planting of a sacred pole in the ground, a pole made of a long spear ensheathed in grass, bound with a string of human hair, and ornamented with alternate rings of red and white bird's down, having a large tuft of eagle hawk feathers affixed to the top. And when the pole, following a final mime and dance, has been planted, the youth is told to embrace it, for it will prevent the operation from being painful. He need not be afraid. One of the men lies on the ground face downward, and a second lies on top of him. The boy is led from the pole and placed full length face upward on this living table, while the company sets up a great shout. Immediately a third man sitting astride the boy's body grasps the penis and holds it ready for the stone knife, while the operator, appearing suddenly, slits the whole length of the urethra from below. Meanwhile, in the women's camp, the boys' female relatives, having heard the men shout, are ceremonially slashed across the stomach and shoulders by the boy's mother. The boy is lifted away and squats over a shield into which the blood is allowed to drain, while one or more of the younger men present, who have been operated on before, stand up and voluntarily undergo a second operation to increase the length of their incisions. These stand hands behind their backs and legs wide apart. These stand hands behind their backs and legs wide apart, close to the sacred pole, and shout, "Come and slit mine to the root." They are pinioned from behind, and the operator cuts them to the root. Most men at some time or other undergo the second operation, write Spencer and Gillen, and some come forward a third time, though a man is often as old as 30 or 35 before he submits to this second operation. The sexual aspect of the symbolism of this fantastic rite is almost too obvious to require comment. The subincision wound is frequently referred to as a penis womb or vagina, so that the male has been intentionally converted by the operation into a male female. The vaginal father, as Dr. Roheim has observed, replaces the phallic mother of the infantile situation. And the blood that is drawn from the subincision wounds, therefore, corresponds in the men's imagination to the menstrual blood of the women, which in the usages of women's magic is extremely potent. That one of the most pronounced traits that one of the most pronounced traits of primitive psychology in many parts of the world is the savage male's horror of menstruation, has long been a commonplace anthropological knowledge. It is a well-known fact, states Dr. Roheim, that the sight of the bleeding vagina produces castration anxiety in the male. The boys must always have been afraid of the castrating vagina. Now the fathers have this powerful weapon. But now, too, the lads themselves have been given it. Their traumatic separation from the mother in the rite of circumcision has thus been balanced by an achievement of identification simultaneously with the mothers and with the fathers. We are not afraid of the bleeding vagina, they now can say. We have it ourselves. It does not threaten the penis. It is the penis. And finally, we are not separated from the mother, for we two are one. We'll stop there. Thank you for joining me, and next time we'll continue with Chapter 2 in the Imprints of Experience.